Good evening. Welcome to Instructional Design for the Ground Up with Ashley Bunn and Denise Cardona. And we are going to have some fun tonight. We're going to talk about root cause analysis. I may sing a song or two. We'll just have to see how it goes. But we're going to do a little bit different format tonight. We're going to do a lesson for the first couple minutes, and then we're going to have conversation after that. And what we would like for all of you to do is to come in and join us. And we want you to be part of this conversation. We want you to ask questions. We want you to offer comments. If there's anything about this that doesn't make sense to you, if you think we're absolutely wrong, put that in the comments and Ashley will defend it one way or the other, and we'll make it work. So, root cause analysis. And by God, let's get going with this because we're going to have some fun. So, RCA, as we call it, or maybe you call it something else, there are some four-letter words that people call it. But essentially, root cause analysis is the very basis, the very beginning, the genesis of what we do in instructional design. So, the first thing that we always say as instructional designers is we need to find out what the problem is. Is there something that we can address? And we certainly can't answer that question unless we know what's going on. So, we always do this. We have to know what the genesis of what we're doing really is. So if we're asked to design a course or put together a program, we have to know why we're doing that because we're never going to be successful if we don't have this basic information. So it's always the first process in analysis, whether you're looking at the ADDIE model or SAM or rapid prototyping or one of the other 4,000 other ISD models out there. This is the first thing you're going to do. And also, this is a basic part of systems analysis. So I always say that we're systems analysts. What we do in instructional design is look at the systems around us, look at our systems for our courses with our populations and content and all the other variables in there. And this is just the beginning of that process. So what this will do, and you can't really go any farther till you do this, is determine what is the root cause. Then you have a basis for conversations about what you want to do from there. And if you find out it's not an issue that you can address, or it's going to cost more money, or whatever might happen at that point, at least you can have an informed decision and conversation preceding that decision. So, types of root causes. Now, these are just some of the things I'm going to put up here, but other people actually will add to this. Denise will add to this. So you want to know knowledge and process deficiencies. So do you have an issue where people just don't know what to do or don't know how to do something? That's one type of a root cause. Missing quality. Okay, so if there is no training, obviously it's missing. If the quality of the courses or whatever the cure was for the problem is not up to standard, then okay, here you go with a root cause. Organizational and leadership gaps. Well, we've never seen that. We've never seen an organization with poor leadership or anything like that. But if that's the case, we need to know that because we can't design a course about how to get along with your awful boss. And really, it's not something I would prefer to do, even though I've had to do that several times. Sometimes, especially a nonprofit, to do what they need to do in terms of training and other things that are going on. What about attitude, influences, and population? So, attitudinal influences. Do you have an issue with motivation? Do you have an issue with people just don't want to get engaged? Do you have a population that has a lot of informal leadership in it that's taking the reins away from the formal leadership and causing you problems? That could be a root cause issue. And think about everything else that could possibly be going wrong that might get you to the point where you've been asked to design a course or put together a program to address it. So here's where we are. We're at this turning point. So approaches. These are things that you might want to consider. There's many different approaches as there are designers, and I'm sure Ashley and Denise will jump in with their ideas too. But you have to define the problem in as much detail as possible. You can't just say I have a motivation issue, or you can't say I'm losing sales, or I've got too many injuries on the job, or whatever. You really got to get in there and find out what's actually going on. Don't stay at 1,000 feet. You need to dig in and dig down, find out what's going on. You want to gather everything you can and you want to try to triangulate the data. So, what I mean by that is get more than one data source. If you can do focus groups, surveys, and interviews, there you got three things you can triangulate. If you can take information from managers, you can have conversations with folks involved in your population. Get as much data as you can and then triangulate that data. so you can have something that has validity that you can stand behind in terms of having these discussions. And as we go through this, just to consider determine root cause or why. Proof test your final outcomes to verify conclusions. So once you get through this process and you come up with what you think is a root cause or issues that you want to talk about, make sure that that's really what's going on. So have conversations with people that are involved in this. Make sure that you're on the reality train and you haven't gotten out of your lane with what you think's going on, which has nothing to do with it, because sometimes we can get fooled too. And also, you want to offer solutions as necessary and requested. There are many times when I do analysis work that I have no intention of being involved in the cure for this. So if I provide what I think are the problems and provide a list of possible solutions, I may not be the person that does any of the follow through with this. And there are times that I just won't do it for ethical reasons. I've seen too many consultants come in and find the problem and then have the perfect solution. And I have no intention of being part of that train. So, things you can think about, I think, as we go through RCA and as Ashley and Denise get in, talk about their situations, this is what we're going to find out. So, Ashley, what do you think? What's your experience with RCA?
Well, my experience with it is pretty much from my early years, my more formative years in life. I've
Your
been
more
working,
formative years?
I
I'm
have
still in my
been,
formative years.
I have been a product of root cause analysis, I would say, since I was about 15 or 16 years old. Um, at the time, I was a student of the five whys. So the exercise is you ask, the belief or the principle is that within five whys, you can get to the root cause of any issue. Uh, as I have evolved throughout my life, I've come into a greater understanding of root cause analysis. And the thing that I'm mostly interested in is the beginning piece where you actually define the problem. And like you were saying, Chuck, about the nitty gritty, the detail, the thing that I want to like clearly identify for our audience is that you want to know the who, how, why, what, when, where of it all.
Yep.
I mean, like really, really understanding to a great sense how this root or how the problem impacts the end user, how it affects stakeholders, how it affects the audience or the learner, how it affects the managers of the learners. Because so often we go into these challenges being told, like you're saying, Chuck, I have an attitudinal problem, or I have a problem with, this one specific group and we need to train them. But the reality is that 9 times out of 10, training is not the end all solution.
Yep.
So that's the benefit of root cause analysis. Sometimes you end up being the bearer of bad news, which I've also had to do.
No,
But
tell me it's not true.
So,
right,
so,
yeah.
so Ashley, I'm curious. When you approach root cause analysis, what does your process look like? Like what? So, to somebody who's new to ISD and to the analysis part of it, what advice would you give to somebody in terms of simplifying a process to be able to get the most out of a root cause analysis? Because you've explained it so well in terms of the benefits, and some people might approach this as overwhelmed or completely just in over their head. Is there a process that you go through when you do root cause analysis that you find helpful?
Well, I mean, it really does follow the scientific method pretty closely, which I appreciate, as long as you start with an initial objective, right? So, as long as you're starting with what your stakeholders believe to be the problem, you can then, like Chuck presented in the lesson, you can gather all of the data And that will usually tell you whether or not that's the actual problem. So you start with the thesis, right? I'm pretty sure that's the correct, the thesis statement.
Hypothesis.
The hypothesis, that's the one. Thank you. So you start off with your hypothesis, and from there, that's how you drill down in identifying the who, what, when, where, how, and the why. And you get to those pieces by collecting all of the data, like Chuck said. And usually from that, once you have your initial objective or your hypothesis statement, then you begin peeling away the layers of data. And what is frustrating, Denise, is quick isn't always easiest. And that's the thing that I because you had said, what's the quickest way? And I want to distinguish. I don't want you to do it quick. Because if
Not
you're
do
doing
it quick.
Yeah.
Efficient maybe is maybe
There's
a better
another
term.
side of that, because you're going to have to do this whether you're getting paid for it or not, right? Analysis, you have to do it. And
right.
many times there's no budget for analysis. I mean, with used projects, I've had analysis projects that were 2 years. And that's what we did for 2 years, was analysis. That is rare. And
Yeah.
that was a federal grant that I was a chief investigator on, blah, blah, blah. But the notion is you hardly ever get that opportunity to do that. So you're drawn in, say we need a course in X, and you suggest, well, I need to put some analysis in the budget. And they suggest that you're not going to do that because they're not going to pay you for it. However, they say that to you. So you're going to do this, and I don't want anybody watching this, especially if you're just getting started in this field. As an instructional designer, you're going to do an analysis. And whether you get paid for it or whether you charge hours, or if you do it in the evenings or on the weekends, or as many times I did it on vacation, you're still going to do this work. And root cause analysis, RCA, is where you start with this. And you cannot get to anything until you do this. And you get just a sourness in your stomach when you start working on a course and it's not going to change anything.
Yeah.
And right?
Yeah.
Am I right or am I right?
No. And it is maddening, because I've had to talk my teams off the ledge before and just be like, well, listen, we know this is not going to be a good course. We know it is not going to teach anyone anything. I am so sorry that we are having to build this. However, I need money to buy food for my dog. So we got to do what we have to do here. But like you're saying, Chuck, if we had the time, typically in that analysis piece is where you find out this isn't going to work.
Yep.
And the sooner you know, the easier your stomach is going to settle.
And do you both find from your experience that, being that it's often not budgeted, that it is something that is just sidestepped and not really taken seriously by designers, and thus that's why we have courses that really are not strong. I'll just say that. The outcomes are not strong.
Well, I can say from my experience that anybody who's a professional designer and has done this for a while, it's not even an issue. It's not a question. It's not something that you sit there and think about. You will do this work either way. Now, sometimes if you're doing a budget and a proposal, then you'll spread out another aspect of what you do to cover it. If it's a tight budget, you're doing it for a nonprofit, you have a resource poor organization, but they still need your help. We've all been in these situations, and what you do is what you do. But there's no professional designer that would not do this. And I can assure you that you can tell when you don't have a professional designer, because there are so many holes in what they do that you could drive a bus through them. And everybody thinks that instructional design is not a complicated thing to do. And, oh, gee, that's easy. You just do PowerPoints and what other nonsense that people come up with anymore. I've stopped even listening to them now, because if you don't know enough about it to even have a reasonable complaint about it, stay home and color or something. I don't know what to tell you. But we should see this all the time. And this is why a professional designer can look at a course or look at a process, and in 30 seconds, they know whether these people know what they're doing or not. And
Exactly. The
I don't know.
indicator, and to your point, Chuck, the indicator that the root cause analysis was done improperly or that it was missed at all is going to be within the first couple of pages of a design document, within
Oh,
the
yeah.
objectives or the
Oh, yeah.
course description. When you're reading through those things, there are a couple of areas within a design document, if there is one at all, right?
Yeah.
That will help you
Design plan.
determine,
What an idea.
right? That will help you determine if a root cause analysis was conducted effectively. So, one, if the audience analysis is lacking in certain criteria in understanding prior knowledge or understanding of how to use a tool that is being taught, those are ways that you can determine that the root cause analysis was not done effectively.
Yeah.
If the course objectives are missing certain key behaviors and competencies, those are ways that you can see if the root cause analysis was not done effectively. And if the materials being used to deliver the course, so say, for example, the root cause analysis or the problem here is that we have remote learners who are having issues logging in on time for work, right? But the course is being delivered synchronously and it's spanning multiple time zones. That to me says that someone didn't do the necessary work to determine what was the effective delivery method for this course.
Yeah. Well, you have to do your homework. And that's the thing about professional design. This is a science. Okay, there is a hypothesis. There is an action plan. And
Mhm.
anytime I see objectives that say, sales are going to go up 8%, well, okay, good enough. Don't, don't, I'm not going to be part of that. Hey, good. Hello, Mona. Around when does someone new get into the idea field begins? What do experts in the field say? Around when does someone new getting into the idea field begins? When do they begin root cause analysis? Immediately.
Yeah.
Because this is where you start. This is kind of when you start with the alphabet. This is the A. It really is. It's analysis, and
So, yeah. So, literally, the moment you are approached from either your manager or a client or a customer saying, we need a course developed on X, that's when the analysis begins.
yeah. And Mona, and maybe I could take your question farther. Are you talking just in general about when someone is interested? How would they get experience and do those kind of things? There's lots of different ways to do that, I think. In fact, that might be a great other topic we could do. We should add that to our list. Um,
Hmm.
Mhm.
what's the first thing you want to do when you get into thinking about ISD? And, you may not be taking any courses or anything else, but you're interested in the field. So, pick up a good book or watch some YouTube videos or, do something that'll give you a background on it.
I mean,
I,
sorry, Chuck.
no, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say one thing. So I've mentored a couple of junior instructional designers or people who are entering the field. And I always tell them volunteer work is honestly the easiest way to get into and strengthening your experience in instructional design. Finding a nonprofit in your area or a religious organization or a youth organization. A lot of youth nonprofits are looking for people to help stand up curriculum for them, and they're struggling. So I always recommend doing some volunteer work because that's generally a good place where sometimes you'll have a lot of data, but not people available to do the necessary analysis. So that's how
Yeah.
you can get good hands-on experience is by volunteering with organizations in your area. And people will usually not turn down free help when developing training courses, I promise
Yeah.
you.
And the other thing is to get active in the ATD local chapters, the ISPI local chapters. Um, there's lots of different ways where you can start to network. And I think in ISD, especially, networking is 90% of where the jobs come from and where the information comes from, and the rest of it. You build your own network, but there's also a network of people that have established in this field and do this all the time. But I think one of the best ways to start is just start reading and start watching. And I can remember when I started, I mean, I just picked up a book. It was Gagne's book. And didn't sleep for 3 weeks, so I didn't understand any of it. But then I started taking 602 with Dr. Cook, and it started to make sense to me. So I think in the absence of getting a formalized approach to this with either academics or certificate programs, there's little things like what we do here on this YouTube channel. I mean, we've tried to cover all the basics here and give people a sense of what we're doing. And if there's a better way to do that, we'd certainly like to hear it, and we will do it. But I just think immersing yourself in it, finding ways to volunteer, talking to people that do know what they're doing, and
Mhm.
that's a great start to that. But it's things like RCA, just knowing what this is and knowing that you start with analysis sometimes is 50% of getting some traction in instructional design is knowing about objectives, 4-part objectives. Okay, we don't use understand and learn, and just little basics like that that you can get from things that you can read. So, Mona, I hope that works. I hope that helps with that. But it's topics like this. And I can assure you, if you talk to someone and you want to volunteer to do a course or something, and you bring up the term root cause analysis, they're going to say, I think this person's got a good start on us. At least they know the terminology, they know the process, and I think those are all great things. So why don't we put on our calendar to do a how to get started? And maybe Mona will bring you in and you can ask questions. We'll do something like
Mm-hmm.
that. Because
I
you're,
love it.
Um, Sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, Mona, to your question, a lot of times, the nonprofits, they will have experts in the field of the topic, but not necessarily the field of instructional systems design. And that's where Chuck's advice about networking within the industry is valuable. So, utilizing the ISD from the ground up textbook, and I truly, that's not a plug. Like, it truly is something that I give to everyone that's a new instructional designer starting out. But if you have that and you have, resources from the subject matter experts within the field that you're volunteering in, 9 times out of 10, you'll be able to get a good start on your root cause analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, truly what you're getting to is the who, what, when, where, how, and why of the problem. Like it's it seems like such a rudimentary concept, but
Mhm.
so many people are driven by blind sheer faith that whatever my stakeholder is saying is the problem. And that's always going to be the downfall. You really do have to see it
Yeah.
as a scientific method and understanding that I'm coming in as an unbiased voice to assess the validity of this problem and to determine what the cause is. And so those will be the most valuable tools.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to be a great instructional designer, be nosy. Um, I
Don't
hate
be
to
afraid to
say it,
ask
but
questions, right?
put your nose in it till you can't smell, because that's what's going to happen. And I've taught the 5 levels of why. I don't know if you picked that up from me actually, but I think in the class we always had 5 levels of why, and we would do
Mhm.
an exercise where we would look at something and we would say why. So I'm having a lot of people get hurt at work. Why? And the manager will say, because they're falling off the ladders. I'll say, why? Right? And you go down through this. If you do 5 levels of why, and Mona, this is something you can do right now. It'll drive your family crazy, which, it may be
Yes,
a
it
plus or a
will.
minus. If you're like my family, it's a plus. But you just look at this stuff and you got to be nosy. You got to be really interested. You got to dig. And as I always say, you got to be a detective. Put on that Sherlock
Mhm.
Holmes hat and reason it out, because there is a riddle that you can solve every time. I've never seen one you couldn't solve. But
Mm-hmm.
how deep you have to get into it, sometimes it's toe deep and sometimes it is eye level deep. It just depends on what you're into and how much BS is being thrown at you from all different angles. And that's one reason I like to just do analysis sometimes, just be the forensics. Let me find out what's going on here. Let me make some suggestions. What you do with it after that is up to you. So I don't know. What do you think? I think this is I love RCA. I love analysis. I would do nothing but analysis,
Yeah.
especially forensics. I like to find out what went wrong. I like to go back and figure out where the starting point of the disaster was. And
You, it makes you the smartest person in the room. Like that's the to me,
well,
that's the
not
thing.
me. It might make you the smartest person in the room. It
No,
makes me
that's,
get things thrown at me in board meetings, but
well,
that's
I
a
don't
whole
say it.
different issue.
Like I usually just sit back and I think to myself, like, yeah, all of this makes sense. It kind of serves as your crystal ball of experience where you can sit back and say, because I did the analysis, and like to Chuck's point, 9 times out of 10, the stakeholders aren't going to want you to do it, or they're not going to want you to take the necessary amount of time it will take. But once you've done it, you can almost exactly predict when things are going to go wrong.
Oh yeah, I, within, especially if it's a group of lessons or something, you can say this is going to fall off
Mm-hmm.
right off the cliff about halfway through lesson one because you have not thought this out. And
Right.
I think that's okay, and I have no problem with that. And I think, as I say many times, the more professional and the more experience a designer has, the less qualm or trepidation they have about telling somebody the truth. And
Yep.
I've gone nose to nose with many VPs and boards about things, but I'm not going to back up when I'm right. When you're right, you're right. And if you've done your homework and you know what you've got in front of you and you have the experience to back it up, then they can go ahead and get somebody else to do whatever they do, or they can go ahead and continue to use horrible managers and think that's going to cure their motivational productivity issues or whatever the problem is. And the
Mm-hmm.
higher up you get in this and the more experience that you get in this, there are people that do nothing but analysis. That's all they do their entire careers is analysis. And I mean, it's important. You're going to do it. You're going to do RCAs. You're going to do all these other things as task analysis. All these things. They're so much fun from my perspective. I love doing these things because I
Yeah.
really like to get to the root cause of anything, either a process or a design or a problem. And I got a lot of energy for this, and I probably look silly, but I really do enjoy doing this. So, um, let us know what you think of this new format. We're going to try to do a 10-minute lesson and then a 20-minute conversation. And we're going to try to do a lot of these. And what we like to do, topics that you think are important, not so much what we think are important, because sometimes we're sitting here in the blind, really don't know. So let us know if you've got ideas. If you like it, content ideas, Mona, we're going to pick up on your idea about how to get started and getting some traction. And we're going to bring you into that discussion and see what we think would serve that need. So, Ashley, any final thoughts here on RCAs? And
I would say my final thought on RCAs is that it really does become the foundational block to how you build an effective course or training curriculum. And if you do it right, you can also build into your analysis how you're going to evaluate the effectiveness of the program or a course. And like you said, Chuck, the more curious you are, the larger your analysis will become, but the more strength you'll have to your argument in defending your position. So it's definitely worth the time, regardless of what your stakeholders say.
the voice of experience, the voice of experience. And Denise, What's this all saying to you?
That it is the foundation. Ashley, what you just said, the foundation. And, I think of not doing a root cause analysis as being a Band-Aid approach. And I don't care what you're talking about with root cause analysis, whether it's a health problem that they haven't uncovered the root cause analysis, the root cause, excuse me. It's just putting a Band-Aid over a problem and you're not really solving anything in the end. And so it is, from my takeaway from this whole segment, is it is really important to take that time to do that analysis, get down, figure out what the root cause problem is so that you can then provide a proper solution. Because isn't that what the whole point of what we do is?
Well, some would argue otherwise, but I seem to think that's what it is. So thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Denise. Thanks to Mona. Thanks to everybody else that's going to watch this and post and be part of it. Remember, Tuesday's live, new format. We're going to have lots of fun folks. Ashley's going to be back all the time. We can't get rid of her. So we're going to keep her. We love her to death. So she's going to be here with us. She's going to do some of these lessons, and we're going to try to really meet the needs of the industry in our field. So remember, this is your YouTube channel. If you're an instructional designer, subject matter expert, teacher, trainer, manager of the process, anything else, this is for you. It's not monetized. It's not patronized. It's not anything else. This is out of the goodness of our hearts and our own time. And we're trying to grow the field and bring visibility to what we do. So thank you for being with us. We'll see you again on the next lesson. And please take a look at the other videos that we have in here and see if something catches your fancy. The best.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.